This video will briefly cover the offense-defense paradigm and how it's used in debate. As a lesson preview, the first part will cover what offense is, the second part will cover what defense is, and then finally we will go over what a turn is. So the first question that you should ask is, what is offense? Offense is why the judge should support your advocacy, so it's an active reason on why the judge should vote for you and why your side is good or why the other side is bad. For example, if your opponent says that they decrease poverty, that would be an offensive argument because your opponent is making an argument that is saying why their advocacy is good. In this case, your opponent is saying that their advocacy is good because it decreases poverty. In terms of a more understandable example, in basketball, offense means that you can score points which allow you to win the game. In debate as well, you always need offensive arguments in order to win. Just having defense does not win you the round because you don't get points like in basketball. Now the second question that you should ask is, what is defense? Defense is the opposite. Defensive arguments mitigates your opponent's offense. It says that your opponent's arguments aren't that good or aren't that bad. For example, if your opponent makes an offensive argument saying that they decrease poverty, you would say they don't decrease poverty. All of these arguments are defensive because it mitigates your opponent's offense. Your defensive arguments cancel your opponent's offensive arguments out. And that's where the term mitigatory defense comes in. And going back to our basketball example, you can't win a basketball game with only defense. Blocking every single shot and having perfect defense doesn't mean you can win if you can't score any points. Only if your defense is absolutely perfect will the score be 0-0, which is still very unlikely. If your opponent has even just one piece of offense that you forgot to answer, your opponent would win. Because in the judge's mind, that one piece of offense could be that deciding 1% on why they should vote for your opponent. Okay, so now we are going to talk about turns. And when we recall what offense and defense is why your side is good and why your opponent's side is bad. And defense is saying why your opponent's side isn't that good and why your side isn't that bad. Remember, offense is why your side should win and why your opponent's side should lose. Defense is why you shouldn't lose and why your opponent shouldn't win. So now let's talk about turns. Turns are strategic offensive arguments used against your opponent's offensive arguments. If your opponent's offensive argument is lead in water is bad, thus removing lead from water is good, a turn to that offensive argument could be filters that remove lead have lead in them, which means that your opponent actually increases lead in the water, which is even worse. Although this argument doesn't have any evidence, it still proves that a turn can be really strategic. Even if your opponent has like 10 pieces of offense, if you read a good turn against that piece of offense, that means that their argument no longer proves why they should win, but is a reason why you should win, because you just turn the offensive argument in your favor. So this is where the terminology of a turn comes in, but I hope this video helped you understand what offense is, what defense is, and how do you strategically use a turn in debate.